Welcome to Incorruptible Mass. Our mission here is to help you and us all transform state politics, because we know that we could have a legislature that supports the needs of the vast majority of the residents of our beautiful state. And today we are going to be talking about Harris's vice presidential pick, Tim Walz. And we're also going to be talking about his state of Minnesota and how impressive it is that their one vote majority of Democrats there is passing so much policy. We'll compare it a little bit to Massachusetts, where we will be discussing our session this time around, which is abysmal in how much we have passed. But before we get on to all of that fascinating stuff, I am going to introduce my two illustrious co-hosts, and I will start off with Jonathan, if you would introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, Jonathan Cohn, he, him, his. I'm joining from the South End in Boston. I've been active on progressive issue and electoral campaigns here in Massachusetts for a little over a decade.
Thank you. And Jordan.
Jordan Berg Powers, he, him, and I am coming from Worcester, Massachusetts. And I love you all, and I mean you listening right now so much, that I am missing the U.S. women's national team playing right now in the Olympics to be here to talk about this really important topic. But that's how much I love this podcast.
Awesome. And I am Anna Callahan, she, her, coming at you from Medford. Super into local politics across the country. Love working on state politics with these guys and running this podcast. And we are so excited to talk today about the very new news, which by the time this podcast comes out will be a few days old, that the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, has chosen her own vice presidential pick, Tim Walz of Minnesota. I will say he was my top pick. He is the one that Bernie wanted, which of course means a lot to me, being a Bernie person. And because of that, I was quite sure that he would not be picked. And so I am thrilled. I'm thrilled because he's like so pro-union, and he's great. He's done a lot of wonderful, amazing things in Minnesota. And I would love to hear from you guys, your thoughts on Tim Walz.
Jordan, do you want to start? Okay. So the thing that I find really kind of refreshing about Tim Walz as a Democratic politician, and let me just pull up this quote so I can say it correctly, so ultimately it feels, before I get to the quote, ultimately it feels very radical in Democratic Party politics these days when you see politicians campaign on doing things and then get into office and like actually do the things that they campaigned on.
So
and like
Republican.
Right? like it shouldn't feel radical. And it's something that I also feel like Democrats often, that for those of us on the left, often get unfairly maligned by a bunch of, let's say, folks in, let's say, a centrist Democratic operative world but we demand so much and yada yada. Whereas most of us acknowledge that the extent of things that we would like to see may not happen, but we would like to see Democratic politicians at least do the things that they say they believe in doing, because even just that alone is much better than the status quo. And it's refreshing when Democrats actually believe that. Like the quote that I was alluding to is Tim Walz saying, kind of, right now Minnesota is showing the country you don't win elections to bank political capital, you win elections to burn political capital and improve lives.
Yes.
And I think that's like an important, just like a fundamentally important kind of framework to realize that when Democrats in Minnesota finally achieved a trifecta, something that they hadn't had,
trifecta, they won the House, the state House, the state Senate, and the governorship. Yes.
And the governor, because of having had Republican governors in recent history and having had a Republican Senate for a number of years. And they only won the Senate by one vote. But when they did achieve that, they actually were like, okay, we have all of these policies that we wanted to be able to pass, and by being in the minority, we haven't been able to. And so I've had an incredibly productive legislative session, in some cases doing things before Massachusetts itself did them.
I want to get into that in a second, if you don't mind. Can we I just want like a few thoughts about Tim, and then I really want to go into a block where we talk about Minnesota and everything they're compare it kind of to Massachusetts.
The other thing I would just note with that is that I appreciate one kind of that kind of conscious living out. He's somebody who is very strong labor cred, which I think is important. And I think as somebody who has like good relationships with a wide variety of people in Congress, I think that's important. Like if you have somebody who gets very positive statements issued about them by both AOC and Joe Manchin, they're remarkably impressive at politics in some way. And I think that that's much to his credit that he was able to be kind of well liked by his colleagues in the House. He had somebody who had won a historically Republican seat and held it even amidst Republican waves. And as somebody who's a former high school teacher, brings even a professional background that is often underrepresented in Democratic politics, where often our highest ranking politicians are all lawyers.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily like we have many, like no shade against lawyers. We have many competent, wonderful politicians who are lawyers, but the legal mindset isn't the only important mindset that needs to be represented, particularly because the problem that you can often get with certain attorneys is that as a mindset of how the law tells you what you shouldn't do, rather it becomes too much of a mindset in democratic politics, rather than how can the law tell you how to do what you want to.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'll just say the other thing that I like really quickly about Tim Walz is the way he communicates. I think that is another lesson for us. I admire politicians who can take our progressive values, but not even necessarily progressive values, because I think you can oversell people as necessarily progressive. He takes the values that underpin a lot of the things that reason progressives like certain policies. He takes those values and talks about them. And so that's the thing that he does really well in a way that's like totally approachable for people. And that's actually for me the lesson is he himself doesn't always support the most progressive version of any one policy, but he talks about them in our values in a way that surfaces them so that people who don't necessarily share our values don't necessarily share the outcome, right? They don't necessarily even understand the policy, but share our values. He connects on that level. And that's how you win political power, is through that process.
Absolutely.
The one thing I think on that's so true, say two things. One, I did appreciate his line recently when pushing back against Republican complaints about how one person's socialism is another one's neighborliness.
Yes.
Which I thought was a very good kind of pushback about that of like, no, you're just about like trying to help other people. And that brings it down a level from the kind of realm of like specific concrete policies to Jordan, as you're speaking to like, what is the overarching just like kind of values framework that you're approaching policy? And things that speak to like underlying values and kind of people's everyday experiences and connected policies. I don't know if either of you saw going around the other day a radio ad that he had done when he was running for Congress first in 2006. And it was talking about how because of his experience in the military, he had become partially deaf in one ear, and talking about because of having health insurance coverage, was able to go and finally get surgery to hear that covered. And then like one day he turns to his wife and being like, wait, what am I hearing? And it was apparently like his daughter who was like singing every morning that he had never been able to hear because of being deaf in that ear. And then uses that story to talk about the importance of everybody having the best health insurance coverage we can provide for them. And it's a very effective thing that understands the fundamentally like emotional resonance of like kind of something that is like a very relatable fundamental, it's a parent-child relationship, and using kind of the both the emotions of that and the relatability of that to connect, to talk about health insurance.
Yeah, absolutely.
That can get wonky very fast.
One of the things that I really like about him, I was thinking about this because I was listening to a lot of things about the six potential vice presidential picks. And a lot of people were saying, oh, well, she won't want to pick Tim Walz because she's already being, labeled as too liberal and, from California and all that stuff. And like, in my mind, I don't think a lot of voters think that she's like too liberal. I think a lot of voters think that she's, wealthy politician, lawyer from the Bay Area, right? She has a little bit of this like elitist kind of sensibility to her. Whereas Tim Walz, like a high school teacher, football coach, that guy, the way he talks, the way he presents himself, he really just seems like a totally regular guy, and it sounds really authentic. And to me, that kind of balance is much more what regular folks are actually going to respond to, rather than this like being smeared as, left or right or whatever that the media talks about a lot. So
because he doesn't, I don't think he like telegraphs as like that. If you were to ask people how progressive Tim Walz is, he's not going to be ranked like, just because people respond to like vibes often more than specific policies, that somebody who is the veteran high school teacher hunter is not going to respond to signal like rabid lefty to the average.
Totally. Well, let's go ahead and shift to talking about Minnesota and Massachusetts. Kind of, I'd love to cover Minnesota first and all the amazing accomplishments they have. I don't know, Jordan, if you want to jump in and talk a little bit about this.
So Minnesota, they had a one vote majority in their House. They passed 12 weeks of paid family medical leave, the opportunity for residents to buy into Medicaid, free public college tuition for low-income and middle families, a new child tax credit, free breakfast and lunch for all public school students, which Tim Walz obviously talked about, driver's licenses for all people, regardless of immigration status. They passed strong protections for workers seeking unions. How about that in a state? And then my favorite part about it is that they then, in the press release about this, it says, take a deep breath, there's more coming. And then middle-class seniors will no longer pay state income taxes and Social Security benefits. They made it immediate. They restored voting rights for felons who have completed their prison sentences. That's 55,000 people in Minnesota. If you were serving life behind bars for a crime you committed as a child, you're now eligible for release after 15 years. So if you're a child, they created not only a system to make sure that you stay in the children's system better. Also, if you came in our old system, you now have opportunities for release because, again, you were a child. Suspending gun permits for people experiencing mental health crisis. They passed recreational marijuana just from the legislature. How about that? Just passed it. And they passed a new state law protects abortion rights, and a quote trans refugee law shields transgender children who travel to Minnesota for medical transitions from legal repercussions from their home state. And they set a goal of moving Minnesota to carbon free, 100% carbon free by 2040, and a real plan to do it. And it was, and it got nicknamed the Minnesota Miracle. And I just want to say really quickly, one quick thing. For those of you who don't remember, we also passed paid family medical leave after threatening to go to the ballot. The legislature passed it. When the legislature did it, it took away money from poor people who were getting time and a half. It took away money from them because corporations said to do so. It said, we even though paid family medical leave is an insurance, lots of people pay in, it's not just the corporations who have to worry about, right? Even though it didn't cost them that much, the corporation said, if you do this, bring minimum wage and pay family medical leave, you have to exact a cost on workers. We're going to steal their money. We're going to take money that they've been earning away from them. And Democrats in Massachusetts were like, that seems fair. That didn't happen in Minnesota. They just passed it. They just helped people. They passed paid medical leave, and then that's what happened.
And what kind of gets me with this is that there are certain things on the list of what Minnesota has done that I feel like a Massachusetts state legislator would be like, well, we've done we've done that too. And Massachusetts has an over 80% Democratic House and a 90% Democratic Senate. And some of these things we did after Minnesota did. So that we've had that Democratic supermajority for years. If Minnesota is doing a number of things now that they attain a majority, why weren't we doing those 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago? We've had a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate since my dad was born in the late 1950s.
Ugh.
So that like, and that they've, so like, what was the holdup?
I mean, but I guess yeah. I just would say also that we just also have it. Like the other thing I didn't mention on this is they passed Minneapolis had an Uber Lyft bill. That the Uber and Lyft were threatening to pull out of the state, and the state legislature stepped in to fix the problem. Not as progressive as we might.
By the way, they didn't step in to prevent the city from doing this.
Right.
What our state would do.
Right. They came in and passed something that at least got them further along, was hailed by the people who are pushing Uber Lyft as really good, and created some clear guidelines for them. So they did they pushed it and did the right thing. So just to be, I mean, because we don't do these things. We don't exempt our seniors from Social Security and things. We don't.
I apologize to interrupt you, but I just have a special guest here, which is my son, and I'm gonna just have him say hello. Hey, sweetie, are you excited about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz?
Yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. Okay, have fun. I'll see you later. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
We don't. We didn't pass. We didn't pass protections for unions. In fact, unions, their major legislative bills never go anywhere. You can't buy into Medicaid. You can't.
Yeah, like that one. The fact that they basically do a public option there, which like back in 2018, the Senate passed, the House didn't. They've never done it since. So they've just forgotten about doing it because they can. And it's just striking because again, like Minnesota has a 1-vote Democratic majority in their Democratic Senate. It's a 6 votes in the House, and they view in a way that's like a particularly striking contrast here. They view themselves as having a mandate to actually have a shared agenda of making the lives of people in Minnesota better.
And let me just jump in for 1 second, because we've had an entire episode on this, on the fact that our legislature they have no agenda, and it appears that really the people in power, their job is not to pass anything. Their job is to prevent things from passing, prevent progressive bills from passing.
And then what's also what I feel like also stands out, we've been talking, and this has come up in the news over the past few weeks as well, about things that the Minnesota Democratic Legislature has passed. I will point out, they apparently don't wait, at least it seems, till the very last day, and then suddenly get into a and pass nothing.
They did not. They passed those much earlier in the year.
Those things have already passed. So that like at least something was structural, even on that basis, also much better, because they're not doing what we do here.
Yep. And so I think, and so to contrast that, like in Massachusetts, they passed a tax cut for rich people, and a tax credit that helps regular people, but the majority of it goes to rich people. They passed public housing bond bill, which will borrow money, not appropriate money from the budget, but borrow money to fix public housing, and dropped most of the things in it that would have helped municipalities and the state actually build and support affordable housing. But they did pass legislation to gentrify Black and brown neighborhoods, and gave a ton of money for that through the HDIP program. Massachusetts did pass a good gun bill. Not hard, but it did pass a good gun bill, and it passed technical changes to how we think about parenting, so that it's important, but should not have waited till the end. Could have been done in January of last year, right? Like, it's not a controversial bill. The opposition is bonkers town. It's something that's easy to fix, doesn't cost any money really, like easy thing, but thankful. Like, not, I want to minimize it, real effect in people's lives, but something that should have been easy to do and not wait until July to do. Right, that's what we did. Like, I mean, look at the contrast in the people's lives. Like, they legislated to fix all of Minnesotans' lives, and we helped a few people, mostly rich people. And the thing that they're talking about going back into session 4 is for tax cuts for corporations.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
This is amazing.
Not
and
the
really
bill they didn't pass. Sorry, continue. We were all talking at the same time.
Sorry about that. I was just going to say, like, maybe this is a good time to start talking about what is going on right now with Massachusetts legislature, where they just ended the session and they did so little. And we talked before about this pure number of bills that had passed that was wildly below like all the other previous sessions. They have passed so little that the governor is like, hey, gang, you guys have to come back to formal session. Like, you can't just leave. You can't do that. So it's really verging on the absurd here in Massachusetts.
And I just wanted to underscore what Jordan was saying is that when Healy is telling the legislature to come back into session, Healy was not telling them, come back, you need to pass a climate bill, or come back, you need to pass a hospital bill to address the steward crisis, or come back that you need to finish your drug pricing bills or your maternal health bills. It was, you need to come back to pass tax credits for the life sciences industry. So like,
well, that was Ron Mariano, right? He's like, we won't
exactly
unless that's our priority. Yeah.
That like the economic development bill, and she's not even weighing in or saying like, for instance, good things that are included like the Senate having language to keep high school seniors out of adult prisons, for instance. She's not saying we need to come back so that you pass this. It's how do we give tax credits to a very already like cash rich industry in Massachusetts that doesn't need tax credits, which is also damning itself. So that's the big draw.
Absolutely. Yeah. What else can we say about this current session and what passed or didn't pass?
So this isn't in terms of about what passed or what didn't pass, but one thing that I can also point out is that the legislature has also just simply been taking fewer votes. It's something that we've noted before, and I decided to look back on past sessions to see how true it was. So like that, there are some things, as I would note, that the legislature simply does need to take a vote on that will always add to these totals. They need to take a vote if they're kind of transferring land from the state to a municipality. They need to take a vote if they're for like a quorum call to check to see if there are enough people present, or if they're going past 9 p.m., or if they're doing an override of it for a budget line item. But even assuming all of those, it's still striking. Whereas in this legislative session, the Massachusetts House took a total of 199 recorded votes. By contrast, in 2021 to 2022, they took 286. And the 286 of last session was also historically very low, because in 2019 to 2020, they took 420. In the 17-18 session, 521. 2015 to 2016, 559. That also made me wonder, is like, are we seeing more votes? I thought, are we seeing just more votes when we had a Republican governor and there might be more fights? If you look under Governor Deval Patrick, 2013 to 2014, 505 recorded votes in the House. 2011 to 2012, 375. 2009 to 2010, 513. 2007 to 2008, 607. And in 2005 to 2006, 915.
And remind us, what was this year? The final tally?
199 of recorded votes. So you have like, if you see just how like, obviously, there can be a lot of fluctuation for many reasons year to year, but a fluctuation that tends to be like in the 500s or 600s as what like par is for a session's total number of votes. And we have 199.
That is truly remarkable. Truly,
how they're just like fundamentally not doing things.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's
a moment. Can we have a moment of silence?
I just think it does. I think if you listen to this podcast, you probably agree with a lot of the problems. But I think the thing that's hard in this moment is that the whole process in Massachusetts is to gaslight you into thinking that you're bonkers for wanting them to do things, and then also for them to take victory laps for things that should be easy and actually shouldn't be things you take victory laps for. And I think what Minnesota does so clearly is it juxtaposes that. They're not taking victory laps for changing parentage. They're just like, they're not taking victory laps for tax cuts for billionaires. Like, they're just not doing, Tim Walz is now the vice president for doing things for people.
I love how you said he's now the vice president.
He's going to be the vice president. Sorry, yeah. He's going to be the vice presidential pick. He's the vice presidential pick for doing things for people. And like, that's, I think, and unapologetically so, that's the thing that's the thing. And then talking about it in a way that doesn't talk about the people you're trying to help as if they're stupid, as if they need to be patient, as if they're too greedy, as if you have to balance all the time, Mariano, balance, right? And the media loves that. They lap up the sort of Maura Healey, Charlie Baker, Mariano line of having to balance. But what are we balancing? We're balancing people making exorbitant profits and regular people suffering.
Or corporations, like the number of, state legislatures that will say, like, well, we can't go against the health insurance industry. We can't go against the real estate industry. Like, yes, you can. What are you talking about?
You can not only can you do it, but you will be super popular. The internet will love you. And you don't even have to do it perfectly. You can do it in ways where people will still wish you had done more, still wish you had done it differently. At the time, push you to do better, but still appreciate it because you still did the right thing. And that's the lesson that of course there's always dead enders. There's the people that Chris Hayes somebody on Chris Hayes' podcast said, like, there's some people who are just unpleasable. Right? Like, you can't ever make them happy. There's nothing you can pass that will make them, or do that will make them happy. But for the majority of people, if the message you're sending voters is, we're going to do things for your behalf, even when it's not great, the people who are critical are going to be like, that's actually pretty good. That's pretty good. And like, that's the lesson.
And what I also feel like is, like, kind of building off that, the one thing I thought was a very funny anecdote in one story about, like, the Minnesota Democrats is how they had a like this, like, poster board up with everything that they wanted to pass, and like every time that they passed something from it, they would get to cross something out, and they'd be playing this DJ Khaled's "All I Do Is Win." And the thing that I always think that is like,
oh my God,
right?
Yeah, all I do is win, win, win. Yeah, it's fantastic.
People like, I think one thing that I often think of in politics is that people like winning.
Yeah,
it's a basic thing. It is true of everybody. People like winning. And then if you communicate that we are winning and we're doing it for you, that's a very potent political message to communicate.
Well, this is something that I was just talking last night to a friend about, and this basic concept of let's make an analogy. Let's say that, you're trying to bring friends who've never heard of are uninterested in football to a football game, right? And your team is Team Blue and the other team is Team Red. And Team Red is like driving down the field. And Team Blue is doing nothing until they get to the blue 10-yard line. And then suddenly they're fighting back. You know what? The third or fourth time that happens, they're like, why are you even on Team Blue? I'd rather be on Team Red, because Team Red is actually going down the field and they're making some goals. People love it when you actually accomplish something, right? They want to win. And if you can be part of winning, if you accomplish the things that you say you're going to do, like, this is to me, the messaging of it is so fantastic, because people do get it that when you pass this kind of policy, you're doing it for them and you're winning. But like, to overtly state and put it in musical terms that, like, this is a win for you. We just won. Like, that is an incredibly important thing. And I feel like the Democratic Party generally tends to be more worried about, like, preventing bad things than passing good things. And it doesn't feel like winning when you're just, like, trying to, like, stop awful things from happening. It feels like, just wait till they get to their, till they're about to score before you even start fighting. Like, we got to fight and actually make some goals.
Exactly. One thing as well, just in terms of communicating on kind of politics to people who don't, I thought it was very effective. I think, Jordan, you had shared it the other day, or I think I thought I'd seen it from you. Tim Walz's, like, re-election campaign TV spot that
me.
Like that, like, Ed is being, like, kind of halftime, kind of like with like a halftime framing. It's a very effective ad, both in terms of
Yeah.
the macro frame around that and the way that like the many different kind of policies it alludes to in a very values-driven human way.
Totally. Wonderful. Well, let me know if you have some, while I do my little end roll, why don't you think about any final comments you have on Tim Walz or on the comparison between Massachusetts and Minnesota. But before we end, I just want to let people know that this is one of the only places in Massachusetts where you will hear state politics being discussed, being analyzed. You'll hear about the issues, the things that are happening in our state government, comparisons between this state and other states. You'll hear stuff that you are not going to hear anywhere else. And we are extremely happy that we have some wonderful regular donors. We would love for you to be one of those people. You want to just look right below here and put in, $10, $20 a month, something like that would be amazing. A little bit more is also fantastic. So please do go ahead and support the show if you listen or if you watch. We are on YouTube as well as on a lot of podcasting apps, and we're on TikTok, we're on social media, we're all over the place. And with that, I want to see if you guys have any final words. My final word is I can't believe they picked Tim Walz. I'm really, really excited and I'm thrilled. I'm really happy for him and for our country. And I'm getting even more excited than I was about the presidential race.
I'll say really quickly, my favorite fact about Tim Walz is that during his career, he was a high school teacher. In the same year, he coached the football team to the state title. He also served as the faculty advisor for the school's first Gay Straight Alliance, the GSA. And if you don't remember the GSA in the 90s, I, in my high school, got the whole after-school programs canceled because I tried to start a GSA, and he was there. He was the football coach and the advisor. The football coach and the advisor for that at a time, we think of it now, it's oh, that wouldn't be a big deal. That was a big deal that I'm sure that he did that. And I think that is that's the thing we want for our Massachusetts politicians. We want them to just do the right thing. That's it.
Awesome.
So what I would say is what I appreciate is that I feel like we've had very good vibes coming out of the Harris campaign over the past few weeks. I think she's really excellent energy, and I think she's a very clear messenger on a number of issues. And I feel like that they're selecting kind of Tim Walz, who is somebody who was clearly a favorite amongst people in Congress, was a favorite amongst many in labor and amongst many in progressives, is kind of continuing this good vibes only feel to the election, which I think is something that is important because it makes people want to get involved. People want to get involved when there's positive energy surrounding a campaign, when you're combining clear messaging, clear communication of clear messaging, and an energy of people having fun while campaigning.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much. And thanks to all of our listeners. We love having you with us as we're doing this state politics and today a little bit of national politics. And we will continue to bring you the news about Massachusetts as we move on past this legislative session and into the next. And we look forward to chatting with you all next week. Hey there. Thanks so much for watching us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. And it would be amazing if you would also subscribe to us on your favorite podcast player. Just look for Incorruptible Massachusetts wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks so much.